How can you be a human and be surprised that death is a part of life, that disease is a part of life, that, heartbreak is a paraphrase. It's like, you're human. You know that none of this is permanent. You know that bad
Mhm.
things are going to happen. Why are you surprised when they happen?
Yeah.
Where does my personal happiness journey begin? Or is that your question? My personal happiness journey or the project? Or,
Your personal.
I mean, that goes back to, it's very deep. There are many things in my life that have contributed to my happiness. Um, goes back to things like my family from a young age. Um, Continues on through some of the experiences I've had. Some of the things in college that I've done. Um, I worked for a program called Southwestern. We sold books door to door, and it was pretty hardcore. One of the hardest things I've ever done, but I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about people. You kind of find out what you're made of to a degree. And then when I meet people who've done that program, it's like instant camaraderie. So um, that
Mm,
that has brought me happiness. My brother and I, we've traveled the world together. We've seen all seven wonders of the world. Um, that was an amazing experience. Every time I think about some of the places that I've been, some of the times that we've had together, huge source of happiness. Um, I have a family now, 4 kids, married, divorced and remarried. Huge source of joy. My faith is a source of joy. I do jujitsu. That's a source of joy. I mean, the happiness, my cup is running over, man. I can't contain all the happiness I have.
what is happiness to you?
So happiness, I define, and the type of happiness I'm talking about is not like the emotional feeling of happiness that can be like here 1 minute and gone the next. I'm
Yeah.
more talking about like a deep sense of inner peace and satisfaction at like the most fundamental, you know, source of yourself. That's what I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking about, like long-term happiness. So it kind of what happens on a day-to-day basis almost doesn't matter because the happiness I'm talking about
Mm.
is deeper. It goes much deeper than that.
To me, I differentiate that with the word joy. I consider happiness as exactly how you just explained it. It's just a fleeting feeling of emotion that kind of like when you get a dopamine hit
Yeah.
or anything that makes you happy in the moment. It's a moment by moment thing. But to me, what you described is a joyful contentedness that brings you inner peace and outer peace. Uh, yeah. So tell me more about that, man.
Yeah,
Tell me more.
contentedness is a word I gotta put in my roster, you know? That definitely kinda sums it up a lot. I think satisfaction, there'll probably be synonyms. But yeah, that, you know, um, chasing the emotion of happiness is probably the easiest way to become an unhappy person, and that there's, like, science behind that because, any of these things are gonna produce a momentary dopamine hit, which I do touch on in my book. Your brain can't pump dopamine forever, and eventually you're going to have, uh, uh, that stop essentially, and what follows that is pain, and then what follows that is trying to get that dopamine hit again. There was a book written about that I cite in my book, and so that's a recipe for unhappiness and a very hard life. People try and get those hits through many different ways, through social media, through shopping, through, habit forming drugs. There's a lot of things that ways you can get that, and they all don't lead to the type of happiness that I'm talking about.
What do you think is the most common misconception people have with happiness?
That it's something that's just going to happen. Um, Happiness is one of the one of the best things you can have in your life. And people, some people at least, they have some type of a correlation to like, okay, if I'm going to make a lot of money, I'm going to have to work hard. If I'm going to have a good
Mhm.
relationship, I'm going to have to work hard. If I'm going to raise good children, I'm going to have to work hard. Like they have these associations with hard work and these results. But with happiness, they think it's just going to like pop into their life. I think that's the misconception. And happiness is a worthy pursuit. It's something extremely valuable. So guess what? You got to work for it. It's not going to fall in your lap.
What does that work look like?
It's going to be different for everybody because we're all different people, different experiences. I do think there are some universal um, things that will generally lead you in that direction. But you know, so in the happiness equation, there's like 7 questions. You answer 7 questions, you get a score. So you could look at each of those 7 questions and determine like what is the work needed to optimize that particular variable. So the very first one is, are your basic human needs being met?
Mhm.
So, I mean, I've been doing this a lot, and I am conscious about like I don't want to do like exploitative content where I'm like talking to people in really bad situations. Um, so there's like a two
I
sides to
mean,
that coin.
I think there's a fine line between that because I recently started following this um, Christian guy that kind of blew up on TikTok, and um, I think it's just when your intentions are pure, it doesn't matter. It's like that. That's where I come from when I create content, and I don't care what people think. When I go into it with pure intentions, it could look exploitive, but my intentions are not to be exploitive. Um, and there was this guy I followed who had something exactly like that. He's a Christian guy. He prays on the streets, and he goes up to people that just look crazy, like crazy homeless people with like psychosis, and Satanists that are just dressed in all black and like demon tattoos on their face, and he'll go up to them and just be like, "Can I preach Jesus' name to you?" And it looks exploitive, but it's he's going at it with pure intentions.
Yeah, yeah. I have another podcast coming up in a couple weeks, and it's a podcast specifically geared towards like homeless, unhoused communities and those kinds of things. And in talking with that host, like I realized in that moment that I haven't really spoken to people in really, really tough situations. So I feel that the data that I have
Mm,
is skewed. So I've talked to almost hundreds of people at this point, given them their happiness score and so on. And so far, no one has said that their basic human needs are being met, are not being met. And I think
mm,
that while I've tried to kind of be protective there, I have like a one-sided view of that.
yeah,
So that's kind
it's
of what I meant by
like the hypothesis isn't like fully accurate because you need a broader database of people because that's super like I don't even know what you want to call it like you only ask a certain group of people kind of
yeah,
and it's hard because there's so many different types of people out there and exactly like you're saying the homeless when when you look at the was it the Maslow's hierarchy of needs or
yeah,
whatever,
which I talk about.
it's like
Yeah.
yeah, that's not that first thing is not being checked off.
Yeah. Now, I do talk about it in the book. I talk about,
Mhm.
Maslow's hierarchy. I talk about people who are in situations that are abusive and um, where their basic human needs are clearly not being met because they either don't have housing, they don't feel secure, they may not have food. those kinds I talk about in the book, but I've also done a bunch of street interviews, and I
Mhm.
just haven't done that part of it yet. So I do think the equation factors it in, and I do talk about ways
Yeah.
to, um, and my point on are your basic human needs being met? I think, and that's why it's the first question, because if they're not, you're really limiting your ability to be happy. And I think,
I think that would be awesome content. You should go to, like, homeless, underpasses.
I probably will. I've thought about that.
Like, I'm
Prison
in
ministries,
Austin,
yeah, all that.
and every corner is, every corner in Austin has somebody just with, either with signs or I've seen so many different signs. Um, yeah. Or I mean, it's common in a lot of cities actually. Like any city you go to,
Yeah,
you'll see them.
there's it won't be hard. I could walk. I mean, there's people who live. I live in a pretty okay neighborhood, but I could probably walk less than a mile to where I know homeless people are living underneath an overpass by,
Mhm.
by where I live. So it's something that's on my radar.
You should do it, man.
That and prison. I'd like to go to a prison
Uh, yeah.
and talk to people in there. And it'd be really interesting to get their perspective because I think they can be happy at the same time. I think some of them probably are
I
happy.
think so too. It's so weird. Have you seen that Netflix prison show where it was like came out a couple months ago, but I had started watching it and it was like a kind of like a test, like a like a test. These guys were in like the most secure prison where they only go out to eat and they're basically in solitary confinement like 23/7, like 23 hours a day,
Yeah.
and they just go out to eat. And they were testing, the test was to basically just free reign, like every cell block was just open.
Huh.
Uh, so they went from like the most extreme like lockdown to now it's like kind of the most extreme just open. Um, it's very interesting and like
How'd that go?
kind of how you'd expect it. Like he
Not
was
well,
like,
or
yeah, not
oh
well,
well.
yeah. People just creating cliques and like gang type, uh, like little gangs and corners and secrecy and like power plays and like
Well,
exactly like you'd expect it, kind of like you hope the best for them. Like, okay, let's see. Um, but then there's always like somebody who has their ego and thinks they're better than somebody, and um, then you have like it was a wide range of people too. It was like that cell block had like 60-year-olds and like 20-year-olds.
yeah,
So then they had like the age wars, and it was like, well, we're the elders, so and then the young people were like F you, I don't like F authority.
yeah,
It's like,
yeah. I
so
wish.
it'd be very interesting if you had the opportunity to go into there and ask them these questions and do like some sort of research case study. Um, because I agree with you to the sentiment where maybe that first question isn't like like a yes or whatever, and you could still be happy.
Yeah, I think it's entirely possible. One thing was I listened to this podcast called Air Hustle. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of
Mm,
it, but it's a podcast about prison life from
mm-hmm.
prisoners. It's made by prisoners. It's about different prison stories. They don't really go into the crimes that they've committed, It's more about like life in prison. And
Mhm.
that podcast really kind of opened my eyes about a lot of the misconceptions um, that exist, about prisons and so on. And through hearing through a lot of those stories, I know for sure some of those guys are happy, for sure. And some of these guys are never getting
Mhm.
out because
Mhm.
they have even the ones that are in there. You probably I'm sure have guys that are not happy and they're doing all types of crazy
Mhm.
stuff, but a lot of them
Mhm.
have community in there. They have very close
Yeah.
friends, and you know that they have very close friends because when they get out, they miss some of the guys that are there. And I'm not talking about people who ultimately reoffend, uh, people who go on to have productive lives. They
Mhm.
think about those guys, they send them money, they stay in touch with them, they go visit them. So, if you're in prison with a guy for however many years, guy or girl, for however many years, you develop this, uh, bond, this relationship, that is a huge contributor to happiness. You may not have your freedom in terms of, you can just go to Starbucks whenever you want, but, um, there are other contributing, factors to happiness, and there's also levels of freedom within prison because you have guys like what you're talking about who are locked down 23 and 1. You have guys on death row. You have guys that get pardoned or not pardoned, but they get taken off of death row and they can now be in the general population. And it's like almost leaving a prison for them because now they have freedom. Now they can see the moon where they haven't seen the moon in decades. Then you have people who can actually work outside of the prison. So that's another form of freedom. And then you have the guys who leave. So freedom is not a thing that's like, oh, this is freedom and this is not freedom. There's even
Yeah.
degrees to freedom, which I never really thought about. But if you think about it, it's true.
No, that's so true. Have you ever seen the movie Papillon?
Have not. What's it about?
Man, it is so good. It's uh it was one of those movies that just like went straight to Amazon, I think. And it has the dude from I forget that damn show. It was like a biker show
Mm.
where they were always driving around in like biker gang
Yeah.
things. I forget the actor, but he was the main actor from that show, and then he played the main actor in this movie. And the movie is basically about this guy gets locked up in a solitary confinement island prison. Uh, I think off the coast of like off the European coast or some foreign country coast, and he develops a bond with another prisoner, and they always try to plan their like escape kind of thing. And he uh, he eventually like spoiler alert, but he eventually escapes by himself, but he went years of just like always trying to escape, like always seeking a freedom outside of prison, where everyone else was just like, "This is it." Like,
Uh,
and it's based off a real story. It was a real guy that escaped this solitary confinement island prison, and he wrote a book about it, I think.
heh,
And it just reminded me of that because there was a point in the movie where he got, because it was the first time he got caught, he went into pure solitary confinement. Like it was just a cell, uh, and they slide food under the table, and he was in that for 2 years.
that's wild.
2 years of just in one fucking solitary confinement room. But the room was, it was like an um open prison, so
Mm,
like to the weather, so like
right.
he could see the sky and stuff. Um, but yeah, he was locked in there for 2 years, and he still wanted to escape and seek freedom, and he eventually did.
It's wild.
So yeah, I highly recommend that
It says
movie.
Papillon.
Papillon. Yeah, it's a French word, so it's spelled papillon, um, but it's pronounced papillon. Um, yeah, highly recommend.
Yeah, I'll check it out. That sounds wild. I think the whole, you know, being in solitary confinement thing is kind of a clue to like a secret of happiness.
Makes you think. Makes you really look what the hell like inside your fucking core.
Yeah. Because if they take that away from you, then clearly it's important. So you have people on the outside.
Most people go insane. That's the crazy thing that was shown in like the movie, because he wasn't alone. He wasn't the only one in solitary confinement. There was people that just starved to death.
Wow.
It kind of reminded me because he was only getting fed like a piece of bread a day, and he still survived. It reminded me of that book, Man's Search for Meaning,
Yeah,
Viktor Frankl.
it's a great book.
It really reminded me a lot of that because, like, just believing that of the possibility that you could be free or have some type of purpose when you get out, um, keeps you living.
Yeah, yeah. I actually I cite Frankel also. And I think, you know, Frankel, at least my understanding of it is I think he came to peace with the fact that he may never get out. And that's
Mm-hmm.
where he determined that the thing that they've taken everything away from him, but the one thing that they couldn't take away from him is what he thought.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my reading of it, and I could be wrong, but I think he made peace with the fact that he may never get out. But I think that concept of I may not be able to control anything in my life, but I can control what goes on in my mind. That is one of the most powerful things I think most powerful ideas I think I've ever been exposed to. Um, that was critical. Also, Admiral Stockdale, um, who was in a Vietnamese prisoner of war camp during Vietnam, and
Mm-hmm.
how he now I think he was a little different. He felt that at some point he would be out, but he had no idea when it was going to happen, and he saw many of the his fellow prisoners um, essentially die. In my understanding of it, because they would think, "Oh well, I'm going to get out by Christmas. This will be over by then," or
Mm-hmm.
Christmas would come and go, and their hearts would break, and they would essentially give up the will to live, some of them, and then they would die. And I'll get out by the summer. I'll get out by. They would set these almost arbitrary dates, and
Mm-hmm.
the way he did it, and I think is a lot of power in this as well too, is like I don't know when things are going to get better. I know they will eventually, and between now and then, and he thought, I know eventually I'm going to get out of here. But between now and then, I'm going to do the best I can, and I'm not going to set arbitrary dates that I have absolutely no control over. So I think there's a lot to learn from that as well too.
Yeah, that is. I mean, that's like the meaning of life right there.
Yeah,
Honestly, I think anything you pursue, you could look at it like that. Like that's how I went in starting this podcast. Is exactly that mindset.
tell me more about that.
Not having so I have goals, but I'm not attached to those goals. Those goals are there to help guide me, but just doing the work is what's most meaningful for me.
Interesting. Yeah, I had I don't really go into a whole lot of I'm Christian, but I don't really make theological arguments in the book. Um,
Okay. Yeah.
there are times where it's like, man, I really can't. I
What?
wrote a whole chapter on gratitude, And I just like, look, I told you guys I'm not gonna really talk about this, but I cannot finish this chapter without saying, for
Yeah.
myself, you know, how I express gratitude in a certain way. But you talk about like the meaning of life. There's a part of the book where, man, where I'm talking about purpose because that is another question, to get your score or whatnot. And I heard a sermon one Sunday. This is many years ago. And that pastor, he's since passed on, and he was a great man, a great relationship. But he talked about the meaning of life, and I really feel like it's the answer, and it's pretty crazy.
What
So,
is it?
um, yeah,
You're like but giving some suspense here.
yeah, man, it. Okay, uh, so I'll say it, and then I'll go back as far as you want me to. But
Okay.
basically, the meaning of life is to bring order to chaos.
So is that what the pastor said, or is that what you concluded?
Now that's specifically what he said. He did give a biblical reference for it, and then so there's a biblical reference for it, and then I look at my life. A lot of people I've talked to people about this idea, people who are not Christian, they don't believe in God, and so on and so forth. But that idea of bringing order to chaos really resonates with people. So real quick, the biblical justification for it is, first of all, his name was Pastor Vincent Canatello, and the biblical reference for it was um, before Adam sinned, God told Adam that his responsibility was to keep the garden. He didn't do anything
Mm,
wrong, but his job was to keep the garden. You know, to paraphrase, to keep the garden in order, because if you don't, you know fruit would be rotten, things would be overgrown, those kinds of things. So there would be chaos, and your job is to keep order. So this idea, like I apply it in my own life. My own story is, pretty. I mean, people have had a lot worse upbringings than I have, but my upbringing was really bad. My father had lots of issues. And I saw that as chaos in my life, and there's generational cycles of that in my family. Like, that's
mm,
chaos. And one of what I believe my purpose, I feel like I have two purposes in life, and they both kind of tie back to that, is I need to bring order to that part of my family, is get rid of that chaos and figure how to be a good father. And I'm not perfect,
mm.
but I have my relationship with my children is, first of all, I'm in my children's life. So that in and of itself is an improvement.
I didn't have that.
It's crazy, isn't it?
That yeah, that's no, that's huge. Yeah, because when I became a father, that's something I always that was like my motto. Like I'm not gonna be like my dad that just they call it the sperm donor. you
Yeah,
just
yeah.
you just have kids and then disappear like you didn't have kids.
The wildest
So
thing ever. After having kids, like I could never
yeah, it's
imagine
so
doing
like
that.
how when you have a fucking thing you created, like you that's I always tell people like that maybe never want to have kids or are afraid to have kids. It's like that's the closest to me that you'll be to God because you literally created life.
You
And that's
definitely
how I look at
created life, yeah. Yeah,
it. So
it's a crazy story with my father. First of all, like as I've gotten older, it's like I've kind of given him more grace for his story because I've heard about stories of his father, you know,
yeah, that generational curse.
and it's like, as crazy as it is, he did a better job with us than he got, because his father
Yeah.
would wake him up in the middle of the night and, you know, abuse him. not I don't think it was sexual abuse, but it was physical abuse, closed fist part like that kind of thing. That is wild. I can't imagine. Like, how do you even have like a reference for what a good father is if that's what you experienced, you know? So
Yeah.
to turn around and have children and walk away or not be able to be there, like, you know, I don't understand it myself, but I kind of reserve maybe there's more to that that I can't relate to,
Yeah.
but it's still something that he experienced, you know?
I look at it, I could see both perspectives when you come up with an upbringing of abuse is I could see it from like a bad perspective, like, oh, he just didn't care, or the other perspective where he didn't want to be in your life because of the possibility that he would do the same thing that he was brought up with to you guys.
I never thought of that, but yeah, that's entirely possible too.
Because it's like sometimes we do things subconsciously and then we don't even realize that we were influenced by when we were a kid or something, and he could have, I don't know, abused you, and he foreseen that, and he just didn't even want to chance it. That's a possibility.
It is, and I r so now I have more grace for him, never thought of that angle. And it's a pretty wild story and never abused to that point, but definitely some pretty crazy things I could tell you. But, yeah, that's interesting. Interesting story with that is, actually, I ran into my father, like,
Like
25 years
randomly.
randomly, yeah, and it was wild, the church I was going to at the time, the same pastor, I'm not there now, I haven't been in that place for a long time, but they were talking about, like, forgiveness, and I had reached out to my father and tried to just let him know I didn't know, like, kind of, where he was at mentally or where he was at in his life or what was going on, but I just felt like I gotta let him know that I forgave him for anything that he did that may have negatively affected me. Because you can only really forgive someone. I can't forgive what he did to my mom because it's not
You can't forgive somebody for somebody else.
exactly,
Yeah.
but as far as I'm concerned, I wanted to let him know that I have no unforgiveness in my heart for you, and I want the best for you. So I was living about 4 hours away and still in Florida, but 4 hours away from, like, where most of my family was, and Jamaican, and, that's where my family's from, and I was born there, but raised here, and there was, like, this really famous Jamaican restaurant where, like, the line was, like, wrapped around the building kinda thing. It was 50 people deep. The person in front of me is my father
Oh, shoot.
after
You
25
recognize
years
him?
of not seeing him. I wasn't really sure if it was him. I wasn't sure. I looked at him, I'm like, "Isn't that crazy?" Like, you see someone, you're like, "Man, I
How
don't know
did
if
that go?
wild. It's wild," So I'm looking at him.
Did you say what did you say?
So I'm looking at him, right? And I, I was not prepared. I had no idea. I was just going to get food, you know? Um,
Mhm.
so I cover my mouth and to cover my face so that way he wouldn't recognize me and I could be more in control of the interaction. I still wasn't sure it
Mhm.
was him, but it's like then he spoke and I was like, that is 100% my father. So it's crazy because I don't really remember the chronology
That
of
was fate, man. That's fate.
yeah, yeah, I believe so. I feel I had to tell him what I had to tell him. It's not a
That
fairy
was
tale
set
ending
up.
or anything, but
That was set up, man.
it was. I do for sure. It had to have been. So I don't remember the chronology of everything that happened because we were in line, but at some point we were sitting down. At some point, where it's kind of a weird like time thing. It doesn't really make sense. But at some point, I didn't say anything to him in line, but he was sitting down, and I walk over to him and I say, "Are you Lennox Campbell?" He said, "Yeah, I am." I was like, "I'm your son, Leighton." And He, he was in the
That is
military,
crazy.
in the Jamaican military, and he, had hearing damage, from being too close to
He was
ordnance or
partly deaf.
whatever. So he took out his hearing aids, he put them on the table, he stood up, and then he hugged me, and I was like, "Alright, well, we're off to a good start." That's what I was thinking in my mind.
That's good, yeah.
So then I tell him, I was like, "I just wanna let you know I have, no unforgiveness in my heart for anything that's happened, and I just wanna let you know that, and the same thing, I wish the best for you and whatever." And I was totally open to maybe a new chapter in our life, but kinda what he said following that, like, let me know that, like, he wasn't there, and
Just on his own path.
yeah, and I had children at the time, and I didn't want them to really be exposed to, like, the toxicity that I know it would come from having in his life. So we just kinda
Yeah,
left it at that. We never really communicated, but I let him know how I felt. He ended up passing away, I'm not sure what year, all these years, but he ended up passing away during COVID, not from COVID, but during COVID.
all these years.
What was that?
You said all these years.
Yeah, man, the years and
Hating
dates
yourself
and time as you get older, man, this stuff all kinda, like, runs together. But, when he passed away, I was like I was good. I said what I needed to say. I felt like I was in a good place with him, and, he actually ended his life trying to make things right, not with us, but with the people who were in his life at the time, and it's like,
Mm,
he was working with a pretty rough deck of cards, and, you know, he he kinda did what he could with the cards he was dealt to a degree, but I'm not him, it's kind of a wild
yeah.
situation, but that's kinda how that played out.
Yeah, my father was just not in our lives. He was, like, partially in our lives, but, um I told this story on the podcast before, but basically he just randomly died, and because we were, like, partially in contact with him, like, some of our siblings were, um, and he just randomly died. They never ruled it out. It was like, so the long story short was he was, like, always into these, like, dating websites and, like, kinda like mail order bride type of crap,
Okay.
and he was basically he flew and he has something with Filipinos. He was always into Filipinos. He flew this Filipina woman out here, got married. The next day he died.
Why? Wow, do they know why, or
They never ruled it out. Like it took 6 months for the autopsy, and they just said it was a sudden heart failure or something like that. And what's even crazier is it happened like in the middle of the night, like something AM, 1, 2 AM. And they didn't call the like the story that she had was we were sleeping. He just like randomly kind of woke up and was like freaking out, like I don't feel good. I gotta go to the hospital and just out of it. And I don't know why they didn't call 911, but he decided to try to drive to the hospital himself, was out of it. I don't know, like half a stroke or something, but he ended up crashing his car into a house.
no way?
So at first they were like, "Oh, like he died on impact or something." But the 6 month autopsy, the crash wasn't bad enough to die from. Uh, it was something to do with his heart. I don't know. They never really, they never really like solidify like this is how he died.
That's wild.
So it's just it's one of those true crime uh, like stories. And then I think the Filipino lady like went back to the Philippines or something,
That would freak a lot of people out. That would be like, wow. Yeah,
right? It's just a weird way, and I just felt weird because we went to his like wake, and they had what's it called? Like embalmed your like
Mhm.
when they like
Embalming fluid and all
make
that.
you not decay for like a week or something.
Yeah, preserve you.
Uh, yeah, and it was just so weird, like because I never really knew him.
Mhm.
It was just like I don't know if you kind of knew your dad or what, but I my dad wasn't in my life like at all. Um, like he would visit like a literally like a handful of times, and I just never really knew him.
Huh.
So it was just I wasn't sad. I wasn't didn't need closure. Didn't have anything. I was just like very indifferent about it, and it was just like, wow, this is my dad, and he's dead now. Like
Yeah, there
so weird.
there there is a sadness to that that I realize for myself. The fact, because I was also indifferent. Like, I didn't really take it hard. I didn't really take it in any kinda way. And I'm like, "Man, my
Mhm,
father's dead," and I not that I don't care, that's not what I'm trying to say, but it's like, it's not emotionally impacting me at all.
mhm.
That is crazy. That is sad. I mean, there's this,
It's
for
sad.
myself, I was sad, but I don't know so how are you processing that, or how did you process that, or is there anything you think
Well,
about?
the crazy what's even crazier is, like, that I don't know if you ever heard of the saying, like, when one person dies, another life is born or something.
Oh, no.
Have you heard that?
Yeah, I've
Like,
not really heard that.
when somebody passes, a new life is born, something like that. But basically, that same week my dad had died, that was when my kids were conceived. Like, that's when we found out, like, "Oh, like, we're pregnant."
You have twins?
Yeah, I have
Wow.
twins. So, it was just, like, a weird timing. It's like when when one door closes, another one opens type of thing, like, what?
Yeah, that's some things to emotionally process, like, you're going through the passing of a father you didn't have a relationship with, and you find out that you're having twins.
Mhm.
That's a pretty interesting time. How were you through all that? What was your, like, emotional state during that time?
Uh, well, I'm naturally stoic, man.
It's good.
I don't know what it is, all my family tells me, like, I'm too cold, um, but I definitely process emotions. I just don't hold on to them. Like, I always see, like, every day as a new day to do something, to feel something, to be someone new.
Huh.
So I just yeah, I don't know, man.
Yeah, I think stoicism is, uh, those ideas seem to becoming more popular, and I don't really see anything wrong with that. I think there's a lot of wisdom in stoicism. I think it's like the opposite of uh, letting your emotions rule you. That's like
Mm,
the worst way to
yeah,
live, is just to be when
an
things are good,
emotional
you
wreck.
feel great, and when things are horrible, you feel horrible. It's almost better, in my opinion, to be more on that center line, you know. Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, and Marcus Aurelius, yeah, meditations. There's a couple
Yeah.
that I cite in that. It's like, you know, how can you be a human and be surprised that death is a part of life, that disease is a part of life, that, heartbreak is a paraphrase. It's like, you're human. You know that none of this is permanent. You know that bad
Mhm.
things are going to happen. Why are you surprised when they happen? Man, there's a lot of wisdom in that. A lot of wisdom in that.
Yeah, I had no idea about stoicism until somebody told me, like, I was, like, you're very stoic. And I was just like, this is how I've always been. And then that's when I started reading the meditations, and his story is crazy too.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, it's like you can't be surprised, like too surprised about anything that happens in your life.
for sure. Like now, at the same time, if somebody close to me, something out of the blue happened, yeah,
Yeah,
that's different. That's hard. That's
it's still hard.
it's still
Yeah,
hard. Yeah, as people get older and they're in their 80s and 90s, and it's like they pass on. I mean, you kind of maybe it's easy for me to say because I haven't. I mean, my father passed away, but the relationship I had with him, I have a great relationship with my mom. You know, we're not going to be here forever. I'm not going to be here forever. You know, I think you're a blessed person if you can bury your parents. If i- if I can go, if
yeah,
God will give me
and
that.
not the other way around.
Yeah, if
Yeah.
God will give me that, God, give me nothing else. Well, give me everything else. Kind of be careful what you ask God for. I want all the good things, but if you had to, if I had to choose one, it'd be like let my children bury me. That you do that, and thank you. But unfortunately, a lot of people don't get that, and that's something that people have to deal with too.
So why do you feel why did you feel compelled to write this book, and and what is your like what do you want to get out of it? Like what is the bigger reason why you're doing all this work?
So this book is there's a lot of levels to why I wrote it and what I want to get out of it. The superficial level is I wrote a book on happiness and I want people to buy it so I can be successful. The truth is, like, I already have a business and I'm already successful and I don't really need anyone to buy the book. If I didn't sell any copy, which I already have, but we've been in pre-order for months now and things are going really well. Um, it would be fine. Now, I would like people to buy it because first of all, I think it can help people. So now we're like one level deeper. It's like I want to help people to avoid pitfalls that are avoidable if you are aware of them. I also want to help people. So now we're another level because the first level is like people who struggle with happiness. They want to find happiness. They don't know how to, they're running into all these, they don't know where to begin. So those people, I would like to help them. And I feel that I can. And I do in the book. The next level below that are people who are naturally happy. You know, um, I fell in that category of being like a natural happy person and
Optimistic.
optimistic, but just generally things don't bother me. I don't
Mhm.
get bummed out. I don't struggle with depression, for example.
Mm,
Um, so I'm kind of a naturally happy person. And at that point in my life, I thought, basically, isn't everybody like me? Like I wasn't aware that some people really struggle with it, and not even on a depressive level, but just
yeah.
they struggle with happiness. So another
Mm, like
level,
like like conceptually kind of maybe.
not so much conceptually, but just they find themselves not being happy a lot. They're not, and maybe like these terms are really hard to classify. Depression, unhappiness, where there's shades of depression and then there's shades of unhappiness, but then they also bleed together. So, I'm not qualified to like speak on depression or anything like that, but it's like
Yeah.
there are people who they don't seem to be depressed, but they struggle with happiness. Um, so I would say
Mhm.
that would fall in the first category. But some people are not like that at all. They're just naturally happy people and so on and so forth. But this book is for those people too, because you have something that you need to protect. And you may not know that you need to protect it, but you do. And I fell into that category. I read a book called Happiness is a Serious Problem. And that book changed my life. And I reference it in my book, and there's definitely concepts from there that I used in my life and I put in the book also. But I read the book, and one of the major themes in there is that you owe it to yourself and the people around you to have a happy disposition. You should not infect people with your unhappiness. And I think he makes the analogy of like, you know, not brushing your teeth, not wearing deodorant. Like you are not being considerate to to the people around you. And it's probably even worse that you just walk around the world trying intentionally or unintentionally making people miserable because you're miserable. That's not the way you should go through
Yeah,
life.
it's the hurt people um, mentality.
Exactly. So when I read that book, I was like, okay, wow, that makes sense. I'm a happy person, but this is important. I need to maintain it. A couple of years pass by, and then I go through the hardest time of my life. You know, got divorced. I go from 100% access to my children to, and you know a little bit about my story, how important my relationship with my children is. I go from 100% access to 50% access. It is like devastating. I don't know how to navigate the world. I'm so
No, that'd be
untethered.
hard for me too because there's such a big component.
You can imagine, right? It was like very, I've always felt tethered to like my purpose in life. I've always felt like I've had this open communication with God. I don't feel I hear him audibly, but I feel like, you know, there is that kind of like line of communication. And I was untethered. Like I couldn't hear God. I couldn't talk to him. It was just the wildest thing ever. But I knew from reading that book that I owed it to the people around me to not infect them with what I was going through. So, of course,
Mhm.
I had people that I talked to about what I was going through, but that they knew what they were getting into, you know what I'm saying? I wasn't just at the supermarket being a jerk to the checkout
Venting
person
to
or, you know, kicking the dog or
or
stuff like
or
that.
just venting to strangers or something.
Exactly, or just, you know, peeing in their cornflakes because someone peed in, you know, because the life has happened to me, you know? Um,
Mhm.
so that was very timely stuff, like and the thing is life is crazy, as you know, we've both told stories about how you're just going through life and then boom, something happens that you weren't really expecting, but it happened. So this book is for those people too. You have a gift. You have a very precious gift and you need to protect it because you don't know what's coming around the corner. And according to Marcus Aurelius, there are things, if you live long enough, you're going to experience some things that are going to be very challenging. And you should protect this gift, in my opinion, that you've been given because the times of your challenge are coming. The times of you getting through that and being on the other side are also coming, but it's about like how you go through that process.
Yeah, to me, I think I think what makes me kind of stoic is the fact that I'm always practicing these like in my brain, I'm always practicing these outcomes. Like like what if I did just die like tomorrow or what if like how would I feel? I always ask myself these questions like how would I feel? You know, it's not gonna uh be exactly the same feeling that if something did happen, but I always like just kind of like contemplate on it, meditate on it, like what would I do if a sudden accident happened to my daughters that I freaking love with my heart? Or like what would I how would I feel if my mom just passed away that raised me, you know? Like it's never gonna replace the real feeling of if it did happen, but I do it often. Like I do like I not every day, but very often that I practice these like like simulations like and I think that just helps me better cope with the possibilities of if something did happen.
You would love this part of the book I go into. I talk about like doomsday preppers, um,
Yeah.
of which I am.
Are you a doomsday prepper?
I wish I was a deeper prepper. I'm not. hardcore.
You got a
I would
fucking,
love to be more of a doomsday prepper,
bunker.
but I live in Florida. We
I
get
think those would be
hurricane.
cool to, um I think those would just be cool to have. Like let me go, hide in my doomsday bunker for a couple days, like, just disappear for a couple days.
Man, they're definitely onto something. And we live in Florida, so we get hurricanes periodically. We may be without power for weeks. There may be no food on the shelf. There may be no police protection. So that's like the reality of where we live. So we have to prepare for that stuff. And
Oh,
in
yeah,
preparing
yeah.
for that, it also some of that resources and knowledge and whatever would bleed over to like something more catastrophic that affected the entire continent
What
or
part of
world.
Florida are you in?
South Florida, so Broward County, where Fort Lauderdale is. Yeah.
My sister lives, somewhere, I don't even know the city, but it's, like, central Florida.
Right.
Um, I think she lives, like, an hour away from Orlando, but it's, like, central, like,
Yeah.
dead center.
Yeah, Orlando's pretty much dead center and an hour away. Um, yeah, I heard yesterday that Polk County, which is an hour from Orlando, is the county that the most people had the most population increase of all the
Mm.
counties in America. But yeah,
Oh, really?
yeah, yeah.
Maybe she moved there.
That's the probabilities are that.
Yeah.
So with that whole prepper thing, it's like, you know, the nukes may never fall, the zombies may never come. The stuff that people prep for may never happen. May never materialize. But if you live long enough, the people you love are going to pass away. People are going to get sick. You're going to get fired. You're going to have health issues. I mean, these things, if you live long enough, if you're blessed to live long enough, you're going to experience these things. So you should prepare for them. I talk about this, and I talk about like the things that you say you think about. I think about them too, and I okay, well, if this happens, how do I think I would handle it? Now, I
Mhm, mhm.
know the reality of it would be more than I can contemplate,
Yeah,
probably,
yeah.
but at least the one thing I know, the one thing that I know is that I owe it I have a responsibility to whoever is still there to be there for them, you know, and that is something that helps me cope with it. But having these structures in your life, like, and having I call it in the book, like it's a prepper kit. Like you're preparing
Mhm.
yourself for these things that are likely going to happen. But if you don't have anybody that you can talk to and you go through a really bad situation, man, you're not setting yourself up for success. And these hard things are going to happen. You should probably have people in your life that you can go to and talk to when these things happen. The fact that the fact that these crazy things have happened to millions of people, they
Mhm.
have survived. And we know this to be true because life 100 years, 1,000 years ago was infinitely harder than it is now. People barely lived to 40. Now, if you think about that,
Getting tired of the Black Plague.
imagine like almost everybody you love dying before they're 40. Imagine, one out of three
That
children
is crazy,
not
yeah.
making it. So like every parent probably in certain times or a high percentage of parents has had several children that have died
Mhm.
and they pushed through that. We know they pushed through that because we're here. Had they just collapsed and no one they had,
Yeah.
something horrible happened to them and they just went into a shell and never came out, they never had procreated, they never had children, then we wouldn't be here either. So it's like, it's really tough to think about some of this stuff, but, like, you kinda need to.
Well, that's what makes life a gift, you know? Everything you just said is something to be grateful for if you think that way, because we're here only because of thousands of years of ancestors that procreated and survived, and we're the survivors.
Yeah. Um, there's a different part like on gratitude, and I think one of the reasons why gratitude is so important is because it's unbounded by time. So we talk about
Mm,
being thankful for people, many thousands of years before us. You know, we can be thankful for people thousands, million years ahead of us. If they would
mm.
look back on our life and think, man, I'm really glad that Thomas did this thing. He raised his daughters well, because they went on to help raise someone else who raised someone else who ended up saving humanity. Like, but you're the one who kind of started that chain. Like,
Yeah.
it's gratitude
Most people
is
will never
huge.
remember though, It's like we only remember really like to our like grandfathers or something. And then it's like the the legacy that a lot of people strive for is usually forgotten after that.
I agree, but right now we're talking about people thousands of years ago who allowed us to
Hmm.
be here, and I don't know their names. I don't know what sacrifices they made, but I know they made incredible sacrifices. And the whole thing with gratitude is about being intentional. So I don't know who they are. I don't know what sacrifice they made. I can only imagine some of the sacrifices back to hunter-gatherer days, an ancestor of mine or yours who had to go and uh, go and save their kid from some horrible thing that was gonna happen.
Fucking bear attack or
Yeah,
something.
they had to go
Yeah.
fight a bear, barehanded or with a rock, and they won, but they died in the process, but their kid moved on. I don't know who that guy was or girl was, but thank God that they did what they did. So, I agree with you, you're not gonna really know the legacy beyond a certain point, but I still think you can and should be thankful if you're being intentional, which I encourage people to do, is like,
I was just saying that because of like that's what some people strive for, Like, oh, my
yeah.
legacy. And it's like, I mean, I think it has to be more than just that, more than just your legacy.
Yeah, I completely don't think people will remember me beyond 2 generations, and I'm completely fine with that. I do hope that I set some things in motion that I will
Hmm.
never get credit for, and I don't really care, but go on to really help either an individual person, humanity in general. Yeah, I think that would be awesome.
Do you think some people are just a lost cause? Or do you think some people can find that that contented happiness again?
Um, so I believe a lot in spectrums and bell
Mm,
curves and so on. So
mm,
as hard as it is to say and as politically incorrect as it is to say, yeah, there probably are some people who are just nothing is going to help them.
mm,
I do feel that that number is probably really small.
mm,
Um, and my bigger concern is for the people who are in the middle of the bell curve who think that they're in the tip of the curve of people who can't be helped. That's
uh, yeah.
that's sad. Those are people who can be reached. Those are people whose lives can be impacted positively. And, you know, uh, the reality of it is, I mean, this is a small project. I don't even know how big and how much of an impact it is going to make. But if I could help someone, if this information can get in front of somebody who was kind of in the middle, like they could do better, but they think that all hope is lost. But they intersect with this information, and it really helps them. Huge. My goal, I just know how it is. I've been around the world. I've talked to millions of people for not millions of people, lots of people on just different levels about different things in life, and I've met those people in different areas of life that it seems to me like there. I'm not trying to reach that person who's like, I hate happiness. I don't want to talk to anybody about happiness. I'm fine being miserable. I'm not trying to like turn that
Man, I
person.
seen a lot of that during the election.
Oh,
So
we're
many,
going there. Let's go there.
so many. Well, no, I just brought it up because
No, let's. I mean,
a
whatever.
comment a comment came to my mind when uh, I think I had made a poll on Threads,
Okay.
and it reached all the liberals, and
Yeah.
I was just like, "Who are you voting for, Kamala or Trump?" And it was like, I think like 500 people voted, and it was like
Well,
95% Kamala.
on
And I was
thread.
like,
Okay.
on Threads, yeah, like the Instagram, Twitter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I was like, that's sad. And because I voted for Trump,
And
um, and I had a comment on there like just so hateful, like I hate America, f this, f that. It's like, then why are you living here if you hate it so bad? Like, I don't understand those types of people where just like it's like I hate the world, I hate, or at least like for America, I hate America. And it's like, why are you here? You know, you can leave.
yeah, I agree.
Ellen DeGeneres left.
But her house flooded out. Do you hear about that part?
No, I didn't. I just seen that. I seen some random post that was just like Ellen DeGeneres left because of the election because she thinks America's like not good anymore because 90% of the population voted red. Um, I think that's just like I don't know if you've seen the map, but it's like that's what America wanted. You know, they wanted a leader.
Yeah. I mean, the election, I think, hit on a bunch of levels. Is typically what happens is the excesses of one. It's like a pendulum. The
Mm,
excesses of one party are corrected by the other party, and
yeah,
the direction that like the Democrat Party and extreme liberals, which have seemed to have taken over the Democrat Party in some respect, that pendulum was swinging way
too far.
way too far, and it was it was scary to think, what if we don't course correct soon?
Yeah, exactly,
And
exactly.
I think that's I think that's where that comes from, where the results of the election came from. Is America? I don't think. Again, I've been around. I don't know if you know, but we were on a book tour and we went all around the country and we talked. We interviewed people on the street about. I think we alluded to
Yeah, I
that.
seen some of your posts.
Yeah, and it's like America has not like jettisoned mainstream liberal ideas. There is
Yeah,
a very large percentage of America who still hold on and believe in mainstream liberal ideas. What America, I think, said in this election is we don't want extreme liberal ideas.
yeah.
I think that's what this election was about.
The wokeism. Yeah, that's just it. Just makes people more confused, more anxiety, more confusion. You know,
Or chaos.
we don't need that. Yeah, more chaos. That's the devil's work. I'm
Well,
just kidding.
okay, so I don't
Just
think,
kidding.
just to clarify my point, but your point is your point. Um, I don't think chaos necessarily is the work of evil forces or evil people necessarily. You have natural, like cancer is a
Yeah.
form of chaos. That's just
Hmm.
part of life at this point. So I don't think you can pin some cancers on
We
evil
probably have a
decisions.
cure, but they just
What's that?
we probably have a cure.
You think so?
These conspiracies, man.
Be a
That's
lot of
the
money to
crazy
be
thing.
made if they could get that out.
Well, that's the crazy thing about conspiracies too. Um, well, that's the point, is they're already making trillions of dollars with just it's not the cure. Like, they would make less money if they had the cure, because they make more money treating people who have it. If there was a cure, you wouldn't have to pay for the treatments, years of treatments. You could just take the cure and you'd be done. So they're actually making more money, and that's the conspiracy. It's like,
Can I push back
what
on that?
if there what if there is? Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
So my pushback, and I don't know, maybe first of all, there are legit conspiracies out there that have been proven like
Yeah.
after the facts. But I know that the drug companies would lose a ton of money if the cure for cancer came out. But the person who developed that cure would become maybe the most famous person ever. They would win a Nobel Prize. They would become a billionaire. Like there's a lot of incentives for people uh to put that out there.
Mm, yeah, that's true too.
So and then the other thing about conspiracies, it would take a lot of people um suppressing that person or the people around that person or the people who knew. And the more people that know about something is the harder it is to keep it secret. So it's entirely possible. Nothing surprises me anymore. If I were to put money on it, I would say they probably don't have a cure for
Well,
cancer.
well, I was gonna say that could be true, but when that happens, the government usually.
Takes them out for sure. Well,
So,
there's that. You get
so it's like, yeah, they could be like, oh, he solved cancer, but because there's so many people involved on the opposite, the profiteering agenda, they could have.
yeah. Well, that's
So who knows?
we do live in a system of checks and balances. So I guess that's you step out of line too far, then they take you out. So there's that. But
I mean, if that's the crazy thing, like nothing is out of lines these days. It's like they tried to do it twice to Trump. So it's like literally it could happen to anybody. If they were trying to do it to our actual president, they could do it to anybody.
you're right. I mean, I can't argue with that. So if the guy who, but you hear these crazy stories, some of them very public, not about people who've cured cancer. I have heard stories about that, but you hear stories about potential whistleblowers like Epstein. Not that he was a
Yeah.
whistleblower, but he had a list that is going to take out, a lot of people in power. And then the
Hmm.
circumstances of his death are literally the craziest thing. The cameras fail, like the
Yeah.
security guards are asleep.
It's just like, how's everything perfect?
How did that happen?
Like,
So it's like it's almost an insult to your intelligence, and then they label you as a conspiracy theorist if you don't
yeah,
go with that,
you're
which is like,
crazy, or
but the labels now are mean the word racist means nothing anymore because if everybody's a racist, then nobody's a racist. You
well,
know,
have you seen that? I haven't seen it. I just seen clips of it. That movie, Am I a Racist?
I have not seen that. I know, yeah, the guy who put it out.
I just seen clips of it, and there was this one where the guy literally went into a um like racist anonymous,
There's some.
like
I want to.
I am privileged. I am so sorry for being a privileged white woman. Like, I'm so like, and then like the mediator is like, yes, like, please be sorry. Like, I'm like, what
Be
are
more
you
sorry. Let
talking?
it all out.
Yeah, like the whole movie, it's like I don't know what you want to call it, like satirical comedy,
Yeah,
but it's just a documentary. It's literally just a documentary of him
Matt Walsh, right?
going to real places. Yeah, going to real places uh, in real life, and it's funny, but it's real. It's like that's really happening. Um,
But yeah,
but
the
yeah,
the word conspiracy theorist, I think, like these labels that people attach to people to like discredit them and silence them essentially. First of all, there are real racists out there, so that is 100% a
Yeah.
thing. But not everybody that has been accused of being a racist in the last 10 years actually is a racist. And so
Yeah.
when someone says
Pick one thing.
conspiracy theorist, it's kind of the
Yeah.
same thing.
Yeah, it's just these extremes, man. I think that's what makes people go crazy. Is whenever you talk about politics, it's like it's always the extreme side, and I think that's what makes us always divided. It's like, why do we have to like be so extreme all the time? You know, we have to find a middle ground.
I think, man, I've done, let me think here, probably 6 cross country road trips, not related to my book. The most recent one was, but I've taken my kids to, we live in Florida. We drove all the way across the US up to the Redwood National Forest in California and then into Washington State. We've driven up to Niagara Falls. We've taken all these crazy road trips. We've interacted with thousands of people. I just came off of another road trip where is a similar thing. And the division you see online does not exist in the real world when you talk
That's
to
just
people.
online.
It's
Yeah.
not it's it's not a thing. People are nice. People are really nice. Now, you have these keyboard warriors who will go on and say crazy things, but it's not the reality of America. I reject that from my personal experience. Now, granted, I'm not going to protests, right?
Oh yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
going to things like that, but that a protest, but by its nature, it's going to be very polarized and you're going to see extremes there. But if you're just going, we pull up to a hotel, we go eat at Waffle House, we go to that big thing in the city that everybody goes there for. We're just out and about talking with people, and like I've done all those trips, and we've not had one scenario where someone was like, "We don't want your kind here," or uh, whatever. Not one. So now, when I was selling books, I did have those experiences.
Oh really?
But on
What
like
happened?
road trips and so on, it's like everybody was nice. So the point of that was like the division that people say is out there but I think it's online, and I don't think that's really
Well, I
reflective of how
think
America is.
well, I think another thing is that sometimes people they have that online confidence. So even if there are real people out there that probably feel a certain type of way, but they're not going to say it to your face. They'll say
Exactly.
it behind a laptop or their phone, but they won't say it to your face
I agree 100%. It takes a lot to go up to someone, especially a dude,
in real life.
in real
Yeah.
life and get in his face and say the things that people say online. And I'm not saying that to myself. First of all, I'm not big enough to have haters. People don't even know I exist. So I'm not
No,
saying this
I'm
for
telling you,
myself.
I was trying to research you, and it's hard because all you have is just like your book content.
Yeah,
It's not like I don't know. It was just like your book content, and when I research guests, I usually just go on all their social medias and just try to compile questions based off your social media and any type of work you created. Um, so yeah, it was kind of hard to research you,
all
honestly.
good. I don't know if I should feel happy about that or sad, but
Well, it depends on
all
what
good.
your intentions are, like um, if you want to separate your professional life from your personal life, that's understandable.
So far, again, because of the level I'm at, I don't really care. Like I'm an open book in a lot of ways, but we'll see what happens with this project and where it goes. But um, Yeah. The, selling books was crazy, and I definitely have stories from selling books of
Yeah, tell me one of them.
so the craziest story alright, so some context is, I did this program in college to help pay for college, because
Mm,
so my mom, single mom, 6 children, father not present, money always an issue, no you know, it was hard, very hard times. There was no way that she was gonna be able to help out with college. I was a pretty good student, so I got some scholarships, but it wasn't enough to cover, like, everything, and asking her for money is like, at the time, she's doing a lot better now, but at the time was just, yeah, not happening. So, I went to University of Florida. There was a organization on campus that was like, "Yeah, you could come and sell books, and average first-year students who follow the system, they make about $10,000 for the year, for the summer, for the 3-month summer." I'm like,
so this was back in your college days.
"Yeah." So I went to
So
college
this was
from
like what,
'96 to,
20 years ago?
a little more. From '96 to 2000 is when I graduated.
96 to two. Damn. You could be my dad, bro.
I could be your dad.
I'm 30, but I
Uh,
was born
no,
in
I would have to have you at
94.
16. So I technically could be your dad, but it would have been a crazy
A
story.
teen, a teen dad.
Teen dad.
Yeah, I was born in 94, so yeah, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah, that would have been my sophomore year of high school, which sophomores do have children, but I did not. So it's all good. So I'm in college trying to figure out like how am I gonna pay for these things that are not covered by scholarship. Also, another thing that they said is like you do this program and you do well at it, it's like you're gonna really set yourself aside apart from everybody else because you're gonna have hardcore sales experience. And a lot of companies, when
Mm,
you graduate, they want people who know how to sell and can
mhm.
demonstrate like their success in sales and their ability to communicate and so on and so forth. So I was like, man, this is perfect. I make money now and I'm pretty much gonna be guaranteed a career job when I graduate. And it's like, the trick is you gotta sell bookstore to door. There's that. But they said, we
That's
have
the
a s
worst.
what's that?
Door to door is the worst.
Door to door is really hard. So
Yeah, at least I couldn't do it.
yeah. So I signed up for the program. All my friends told me it's a cult. You're gonna get kidnapped, locked in the basement. But I'd done my research. I knew other people, a lot of famous people actually have done the program, and they were on the University of Florida campus, and they were sanctioned by the university. So I was like, I think I'm gonna be okay. So I do it, get trained, go out there. Um, I do a little bit more than the average first year student does. Um, so that's kind of the backstory. So I did it for 4 summers, and I don't remember what summer it was. It definitely wasn't in Texas because I know in Texas I worked in Lubbock outside of Texas Tech, and everything was like pretty much desert around the town.
Mhm,
And I remember this happening in an area where the countryside was like more farmland and green and that kind of thing.
mhm,
So um I pull up to this house. Now, granted, I'm a black guy. I have Florida tags on. I'm in the Midwest. So a lot of Midwesterners, I guess, at the time, they associated Florida with drug dealers and just there's like a negative connotation with Florida. I'm black, you know, so sometimes there's a negative connotation with that. There's kind of a lot of stuff going on. So wasn't an issue in 99.999% of the time. Everyone was awesome to me, but there were times when people were not. And this is one of those times. So I pull up to a house during the day. So the day is because most parents either work or they're just not at home, that kind of thing. So
yeah,
during the daytime, you're just trying to set up your evening time because that's when everyone's home. You have father and mother home, and that's like the ideal situation to sell on because they can't say, "Oh, I got to talk to my husband, I got to talk to my wife." They're both there, and they can make a decision together, kind of a thing. So your daytime is spent like canvassing the area, kind of figuring out who's got kids, what kind of cars the parents drive, so you know when to go back and and that evening time is called gravy because that's where you really make your money. So it's daytime. I pull up to this house in the country. Um, I knock on the door. Uh, a little girl comes out. She's 10, 11, something like that. And so I'm very aware I'm black. I got Florida tags. Like, I'm not trying to have any issue. I'm talking to a white girl. This is what's going on. So I'm like, I'm selling books. Are your parents home? So I got right to it. She's like, no, they're not home. They'll be home, like probably after 5 or 6. I said, okay, thanks. I'll come back. Thomas, I swear to you, that's all I said to her. I didn't say anything more or anything less. And I know that I didn't say any more or less because I say that in all of the situations because you don't want to be getting into conversations with kids that, first of all, they don't buy. They're not the ones who buy the books and you're not selling to them. And there's nothing good to come of a conversation with a child. It's just not a good thing. So I leave. I go on about my day. Evening time comes. It's gravy. I see the house. You got a pickup truck. That means dad's home. These are generalizations, but, they're still wisdom from generalizations. Pickup
Mhm.
truck, dad's home. Minivan, mom's home. I'm like, perfect. I see that they have a kid because I spoke to her. They have at least one. I spoke to her. Mom and dad are probably home. This is an ideal situation. So I pull up, knock on the door, and I hear like a big dog like barking. And I'm like,
Mhm.
okay. But we deal with dogs all the time. Like, you have to know how to deal with dogs. It wasn't the fact they had a dog wasn't an issue. So um, the door opens. The father comes to the door and he's holding the dog by the leash, right? With one hand at the end of the leash and the other one really close to the neck of the dog. The dog is barking and lunging at me. And I'm like, that kind of will happen, but the person is usually saying, calm down, boy. Like, he's okay. It's fine. It's like,
Yeah,
that's kind of
yeah,
what's happening. But this guy's not
yeah.
saying that. He's like, um, I heard you came by my house today. I was like, yes, sir. I'm selling books and, just talking to the families in there. He's like, I heard you spoke to my daughter. I was like, yes, sir. Again, like I said, I'm selling books. You know, he's like, boy, you have 2 minutes to get off of my property. And I read the situation. I knew what it was. And normally when you're selling, like, you have a comeback for everything.
Yeah,
But I knew this
yeah.
was not the time for that. So I pick up my bag and I start walking back to my car with my like with my back to my car so I can see what's happening because I don't know what's going to happen. When I got about
Mhm.
halfway out, he lets the dog go, and it was a Rottweiler, and the
Yeah,
dog starts
attacked you.
running after me, and I'm like,
But
"Oh crap, I gotta go." So I start running. I turn the corner, I jump into my truck, I throw my bag in the truck, and the dog is like running towards the truck. Now, when you're
like
selling books in the
sprinting.
summer, yeah, when you're selling books in the summer, you can't be like in an air conditioned car and then in the heat and back and forth because you get like, I don't know if it's heat stroke or it's just that temperature up and down will really mess you up. So it's just better to stay
Mm.
hot because you're just going to be hot and your body can just maintain the fact that you're hot. So we sold with our windows down, never used AC, that kind of a thing. The dog turns the corner and my window's down. So I'm like, oh crap. So I start rolling my window up as fast as I can.
Oh, yeah, the old roller one.
I had to S them pick, show how old I am.
The manual ones.
Yeah, rolling up my window. It was full manual car, stick shift, man, everything was manual. I love that car, S10. It was great memories of that. The dog's mouth is, like, in my car, like, snapping at me, and I'm, like, rolling my window up. I finally get the window up, and the dog I'm, like, making eye contact with the dog, and, like, he and I both realized at the same moment that my other window was down. So he runs to the dog runs around to the other side to try and get in on the other side. So I,
Oh,
like, jump
damn.
across my bench seat, and I'm rolling that window up. Same thing, dog's mouth is gum it's like the wildest scenario ever. And I pull out and I get out of the driveway, and I'm just like, "I can't believe that just happened. That was so
Like, what the
unnecessary.
hell just happened?
What just happened?" That was like he he knows what he was doing because if I had ill intentions, I wouldn't go back when clearly the parents were there. So
Yeah.
that's my craziest story. But I gotta say this because Southwestern has changed my life for the better. It was probably top three best things I've ever done in my life. I learned so much about, again, myself, people. At the same time I tell you that story, I can't tell you how many people have invited me in for dinner at night and
Yeah.
send me with food and see me later on, and they're waving at me and treat me like a rock star. I mean, it so that's the bad story. I also made a ton of money doing it, you know? My last summer, I made 40 grand in 3 months. So, I came back after that. That was not I know that didn't happen in my last summer either because I came back because I know what it is, and I'm not part of, like, life and success is like, you can't I'm gonna let this guy win. I'm gonna, like, take this opportunity away from myself because I had a bad interaction with someone. No, like, you learn again what you're made of. Not only I went to
Mm,
the next
yeah.
house right after it. It's like, I'm not gonna let this guy, you know, ruin my
Yeah,
opportunity, you know?
it's not for the faint of heart. Like, the average person would be like, "Oh, man, this is it. Like, I can't do this anyway."
Now, granted, if that had happened at my first house of my very first summer, I would
Mm,
have quit because
you were already, like, seasoned.
yeah, I was a seasoned guy. I had people under me who were looking up to me. That's another reason why I couldn't quit. Not that I didn't even wanna quit after that. It was we would trade who has the craziest story. And their
Yeah,
story's crazier than mine. And not all of
yeah,
them are, like, racial or anything, and not I mean, I was one of a handful of black guys who did the program. Most got people were white or not black, so and they have crazy stories too, you know? So it's like the point is, like, the division they people wanna make it seem
there's some
like
people out
everybody is
there,
like
yeah.
that guy, and it's not the case. I had to talk
Yeah,
to thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people to get the one guy who's gonna do that, you know?
that's, like, one yeah, it's not as common as the internet makes it out to be.
100%.
I know we're on time here, so I wanna ask you one question before we move on to my conclusion.
Sure.
So, I was reading a quote by Gandhi, and he was told to explain his life in 25 words or less,
Right.
and he said, "I'll do it in 3, renounce and enjoy."
Say
So I
again?
went
Say again?
he said, "I'll do it in 3, renounce and enjoy."
Okay.
I wanna hear Leighton's explain his life in
25 or 3?
you picked, you could do 20 or you could do 3.
Um, my purpose was to be a good husband, and father, and I tried. That's it.
That's it?
I wouldn't say I did my best. So this is explanation. You know, there are times when I've made mistakes and I knowingly made mistakes and I did bad things and I shouldn't have done and so on and so forth. It's not a, you know, typically I don't do that, but I'm trying, man. I'm trying. And I think at the end of the day, we're human. You know, you're not gonna get everything right, but, I think anyone can look in my life and say, you know, Leighton felt he had a purpose, and I'm very open about it, and I think that's what it is. I feel like my purpose in life is to be a good husband and a good father, and I think you know some of the reasons why I say that, and I have tried, and I am trying, and I will continue to try, and I'll also mess up, and I have messed up. You know, I'm probably messing up some things right now, and I have some more messing up to do, but I'm going to try, and that's what I would say.
Like it, man. Thank you for sharing that.
It's my pleasure.
So, how deep will you go? There's 3 cards, 3 levels. We start with the first level, icebreakers. The question is, what's a core memory you have?
Um, a core memory that I have. So after my father left, he left when I was about 13 years old. We went from a very absolutely strict household to my mother, who was overwhelmed by the situation. And basically, we had no rules. We didn't really take it like we didn't abuse them, but we really didn't have a curfew, kind of come and go as we please, that kind of thing. And I just remember like one particular community that we lived in that had a ton of kids, and we just had an absolute blast. It was, and I guess we maybe appreciated it more based off of where we were coming from and some of the stuff that we had just gone through. To again, we talk about freedom and there'd be levels and
Yeah, that
levels.
was like a sense of freedom.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was a sense of freedom that we had. And, yeah, I would say that that's a core memory.
that's funny because I kind of grew up like that. My whole life was like
Free range?
my yeah, like I mean, I'm the youngest of 4. Didn't have a father figure, like a real father figure. Like my mom had a long-term boyfriend since I was like 6, 7 years old that you could call like stepdad, but I never really looked up to him like that. Um, but yeah, my whole childhood into like until I left, until I left the house was just like free reign.
Yeah,
And my mom would say like be back before dark, or but like, I wouldn't listen. And
yeah,
sometimes there was days I would be scared because like I'm just saying my mom used to fucking spank the shit out of us. But yeah, like I grew up getting fucking spanked the hell out of, but I still did shit. Like I still like I don't know what it was. Like I was just stubborn.
yeah.
Um and there would be days like I would be out and it would be super late, like past the time she said, and I'd be scared to walk in the door. I'd be like I would wait outside for like 30 minutes, just like like walking back and forth, like what am I gonna say? Like, is she gonna spank me? Like, what's gonna happen? And sometimes I would just like walk in and go straight to my room, like nothing happened. Like,
Yeah,
like
we probably got away with it
what's up?
sometimes, I'm not.
Like, how you doing, mom? But no, yeah, that just reminded me of growing up. Like, I always kind of had that freedom, which is kind of crazy because I don't think it's like that nowadays. Like in modern communities or society, it's like we're always afraid.
Yeah, my kids are not like that. I know where they are all the time. They're
Yeah,
definitely not their
GPS
own.
tracking.
Although, I heard this one time and I've taken it to heart. It's like in your assuming your kids are like normal kids and not into really bad things or have had really significant issues with like the law and school and those kinds of things. If you have a normal kid, whatever normal means, um, their last year
Hmm.
in high school, take all restrictions off of them. And that's what I've done. My son's a high school senior right now, and he
Mm,
has no curfew. He doesn't have to like he can basically do whatever he wants. And the idea is, you know, if they're going to mess up, at least let them mess up while you still are there and around, as opposed to he goes
yeah,
off to college and he's away and it's like, this is my first
they're
taste of
on their
freedom.
own.
He's already had
Yeah,
freedom. You could do whatever you want. Just know that there may be a consequence if you like get in trouble or take something too far. But I think that there's a lot of wisdom in that, and I'm putting into play right now. And, so far so good. And also intentionally, and his mom and I have a good relationship, and we do work together on all of this stuff. I have nothing bad to say about my ex-wife. Um, we raised them as best we could, and now we've taken the training wheels off and just like, you know, do your best, bro. I'm rooting for you.
Yeah, there's only so much. Like I don't have teens yet, but I just look at it like how when I was a teen, you're expressing you're expressing yourself. You're getting to know who you are, like what your boundaries are and your freedoms, and I think it's important for teen development. But
I agree.
next question. What's something meaningful to you, but maybe not to others?
Um, so I mean, I guess I could go deep, I can go not so deep, but the not so deep one, and I can go deeper if you want me to, but the not so deep one is I really hate when people don't hold the door open for the person behind them. It drives me crazy. It's like
It's a pet peeve.
it's a pet peeve. I think it's so inconsiderate. I think it now I also give grace to
Well, how far? How far?
that's a good question.
Because for me, it depends on the distance.
I
Like if
agree.
you're like right behind me, I will do it always. But if you're like maybe 20 feet away,
Yeah,
I'm not.
for context, that there is again, we talked about this, like there's gray areas on everything and there's a spectrum. So I'm not even talking about people who are in the gray area. I'm talking about the person who's like 3 steps behind
Like right in front of you.
like three
Okay.
steps behind you, and you don't hold the door open for them. Unless you are like running to save your kid's life, or you have like something that you're gonna be late for, and it's gonna ruin everything. Okay, fine, that happens. But for the most part, if you do that, that is like a character flaw. Like you really should look at your life. So that's important to me. Other people don't seem to care about it because it happens to me all the time.
Yeah, my pet peeve is uh um when driving, people who ride my ass.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that.
That's my biggest pet peeve. That it happened to me the other day ago. I was driving on my way to because we live in like a community HOA,
Yeah,
and we have a community gym. And I was driving on my way. The speed limit is I think 25 or 20. Um, I was driving like 21 miles per hour, and I just heard honking. Like I didn't. It was like I was driving around a corner, and then I just randomly heard honking. I was like, "Who the hell is honking?" This dude was like on my ass, and he just kept honking at me, and I just uh kept going my regular speed limit,
it's your
and
break.
I was so tempted to like slow more down. Yeah, and I just, dude, what the hell, man? Like, you got somewhere to go or something? Like, I don't know. I think that's just like it just shows that say what the fuck? Like, why am I fucking honking my horn so much at this dude?
Yeah,
You know, I see opportunities like that and everything.
yeah, I agree. Definitely an opportunity. Unfortunately, not everybody sees that or is aware of that or is trying to be better. So there's that too.
Getting deep. What is one thing you would change about society?
One thing I would change about society. Okay, I got it. So I um I think humanity is important, and I think we need to make more people. And I think the trend is that on a lot of different levels, humans are a virus on the planet. I don't believe that to be true. I think we need to have as many people on the planet as we can. And I think that if we get too many people, we'll figure something out. We'll create underwater biodomes. We'll create people on the moon. We'll figure out a way to deal with like excess people. But I think
Mhm.
that we should, I wish people would, would strongly consider having children. And I think that people having children is looked down upon in some circles, and that's
Man,
wild.
yeah, it's one of the biggest like modern debates right now is like, oh, like I don't have kids, I'm more free, or I can do what I want. Um, which is fine, you know. We have to accept those types of people as well. We can't like what for me, I have to practice like not trying to like look down upon people that maybe don't want kids because you know that's their free will. But to me personally, I think it's one of the gifts of life to have children, and like I want more too. Um, yeah, it's a beautiful thing to have kids, I think. But some people just, you know, they don't call them selfish, whatever. That's just their choice. That
Yeah, I mean, there are people that don't want kids for like any number of
yeah.
reasons. I think just like to your question, is like one thing I would change about society is first of all, everyone has, people should be able to do whatever they want to do as long as it's not affecting someone else. But it would be
Mhm.
great if societally the expectation is everybody gets married and has children. And if you don't wanna do that, that's cool, you do whatever you want, but as a society, we think that's something that's important.
Mhm.
That would be one thing that I think would, if I could change a thing, it would be that.
Uh,
Is
no,
that a
I
loaded
just
thing to
thought
say?
no, I just thought of something like because that just brought up another thought in my head about the whole uh, division between abortion. There's the more political stuff, like between abortion and non-abortion. Uh, but I'll be quick about it. My thoughts on that is I am mainly for pro-choice only because like I really in a perfect world I wouldn't want any freaking as soon as you're conceived you're a baby. Like that's a baby. People are like they try to put science to it like oh well after 8 months he's just a zygote or some bullshit. Like no, you fucking at conception when the two cells collided and are started to form life, that's when a baby is being born. And the only argument I have for that, for the reason why I'm pro-choice, is we don't have enough like support system to care for the orphans. Like I don't think orphanages are like we don't have enough infrastructure, I think, in my opinion, to support like a healthy upbringing of orphan kids or unwanted kids or things like that. That's my only argument against it.
Yeah. My understanding of that situation is that, um, the waiting list for newborns is very long. Um, where orphan my and not an expert, this is just things I've picked up along the way, maybe have read but not done a deep dive, so maybe I'm completely wrong. Jamie, can you where's Jamie when you need him? But my understanding is that, the kids who are in orphanage by and large are, like, older kids who did not come into, the system as newborns.
Mm.
So, yeah, that I would say that.
Yeah, that's the only thing I could think of. Like, most people get abortions, why? Because they can't take care of it. They're too young. They the big one, they were raped and they didn't want it. It's like if we had enough support for these types of people and the babies afterwards in those like not common situations, um, yeah, don't ever have an abortion, you know?
Yeah, it's incredibly difficult topic, and definitely not gonna get the answer now with 10 minutes to go, but or less. But I think one thing that could potentially help is just letting, the families who are considering that, to let them know that there are a lot of people who, may want the child, and,
Mhm,
at the end of the day, people are gonna do whatever they're gonna do, but giving them all the information, I don't see how that's bad to give someone the
mhm.
information, assuming that what I'm saying is correct.
Resources
Yeah,
and
just
yeah.
look, we have a waiting list of thousands of people who want a newborn. So just before you do whatever you're going to do, be aware of that.
So, Leighton, I have 5 final questions I ask all my guests. You could say them quickly or you can get deeper. We can go over the time limit if you don't have anything. But yeah, my first question is, what is your biggest regret?
I don't have any. That's not to say that I've done a lot of things wrong and I've made a million mistakes, but I've gotten to where I am, and I have the children that I have. I have the life that I have. I have the wife that I have because of all the stuff that happened before it. So I know you change any of those variables and my life looks very different. And I like my life, and I wouldn't change it, even the hard things.
Who or what has made the biggest impact in your life?
Um, I would say my faith, but probably a lot of people say that. But there's a guy who wrote that book that I mentioned, Happiness is a Serious
Mhm.
Problem. His name is Dennis Prager, controversial figure to a lot of people, but in my opinion, he's one of the wisest men that has been alive during my time of being alive. And he has greatly impacted the book that I wrote. He's greatly impacted my life. He's, you know, kind of helped me through a really dark time, so I would say that he actually is struggling with some medical stuff right now. Um, so my thoughts and prayers are out to him. So there's a great opportunity to, you know, thank him for everything that he's done in my life and many other people. So I would say Dennis Prager.
What's one lesson that you had to learn the hard way?
How to be a good husband.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. It's again, I wasn't modeled how to be a good husband, how to be a good father. Being a good father actually seems to come more natural to me.
Naturally,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's easier for whatever reason. Um, Being a good husband is really hard. And in my first marriage, like I again, in my how would I explain my life? I tried, but I screwed up pretty much everything that you can do wrong. Well, I didn't do any toxic stuff. There's no like scandals or anything like that. But everything that you can do wrong as a man, I did. And yeah. So what was the question again? How did I get on the but I know this is the answer to it. I just forget what the question was.
What is one lesson you had to learn the hard way?
Yeah, yeah, as how to so this time around, God willing, it's last time around,
I mean, marriage is hard, right?
it is.
I think I think in marriage, well, I'm separated now, but in marriage, I think you just have to have two fully committed people, like two fully committed to, and that really take your vows like to heart, like until death do us part, take that like seriously. Not, I think that's what makes a marriage last is that, and like obviously values, beliefs, faiths, stuff like that.
I would say this is a whole nother podcast, but all of that is true, but it goes a lot deeper than that. And I think that a lot of people um, get that wrong, and especially like one of the general themes of my life is that conventional advice is going to get you conventional results. So
Mm,
when you get the conventional wisdom on how to have a good marriage, is going to lead you to 50% divorce rate.
mm,
So if you
mm,
want to have a successful marriage, you can't do the conventional thing. You have to be very intentional about a lot of things, and you have to question some of the things that people say, "Oh, well, you got to do this." It's like, when I was going through my situation with my ex-wife, it's like you talk to people in the church, outside of church, like give more, love more, just, it's like that is good, but there's more to it. There's a lot
it's
more
like
to it.
it's like it's an individual thing. It's like you can get like all of the general things right, but then it's still just a relationship between those who are married, those two people, those two individuals.
And I would say that there are some general things that people can do that pretty much apply to most people that is contrary to conventional wisdom. So I agree what you're saying that you have two individuals and every situation is going to be different. But I think if the general information out there was different than the current conventional information, we
Mm,
would have a lot more successful marriages. And I had to learn that the hard way. But I wouldn't change anything because, you know, I love my life. So,
that's awesome, man. Not a lot of people can say that, man.
and my life is hard. I have my issues that I deal with. So it's not like I have a perfect life. My life is far from perfect, but like, which one of my kids am I willing to not have in my life right now? Which other important thing am I not willing to like? I'm I don't know what those alternate timelines are and whatnot, but I'm here. I'm making the best of what I have, and I love um, the things that I have. I'm grateful. That's the whole gratitude thing. Like, I don't think you can be super gracious about life and then also regret a lot to the point where, it would put you in a different scenario. I think that's almost the
Yeah,
opposite of
yeah.
gratitude in a way. It's like you made a really bad mistake and it really changed the trajectory of your life, which has happened to me. But I'm here now and I'm grateful for the things that are in my life and the fact that I live in America. I have a million blessings. I have a ton of
Mm.
problems, but man, I am super grateful for a lot of stuff.
Which everybody who has a like who wakes up every day pretty much can be grateful for something. Um, there's, I mean, there's people struggling to survive, but I think the majority of people in America could be a little bit more grateful for something every day.
I agree.
Next question is, what would you do or experience in life if you had all the time and money in the world?
Funny you say this. I think having time and money or not having time and money is an excuse really for people to not do things. And um, if something is really important to you, you need to find a way to do it. You need to get creative. No, I'm not talking about like going out and buying a Bugatti. I can't do that. And, at the end of the day, maybe some people will love, but that's like a material thing. And I
Mm,
don't really put a whole lot of weight on that. I do like nice things, but, that's not something that I'm like really striving for. But, again, the things that are important to me are the experiences that I have with the people that I love, you know? So I I'm conscious about doing things together with the people that I love. A lot of times that involves travel, um, and sometimes it doesn't. But like, there have been places that I wanted to go, things that I wanted to see, so I go and do it. Like sometimes we have to stay in a really crappy hotel, but I really want to go see a pyramid. Um, we actually stayed in a nice
mm,
hotel when I went to the pyramids, but there were other places that we went where we stayed in some horrible hotels. We got the cheapest flight we could get. We stayed in not a nice hotel, you know, but we got there and we had an amazing time and it was awesome, you know? So time and money, it's like, oh, if I have this thing, like once I become a millionaire, I will do X. I used to tell myself that a lot. People telling themselves that a lot. It's like,
that's common. Yeah.
why don't you find a way to do it now? And that's what I've basically done in my life. And it makes me value the time that I have because I'm always trying to check these things off of my list, have these experiences while I'm healthy, while I'm relatively young. I'm getting older, but I'm still physically fit and I can do a lot. And my kids are young and so on. So yeah, I don't. I kind of I know where you're going with that, and I definitely appreciate the question. But it's a great opportunity to tell people, you know, don't wait for money. Like find a way to do it with the money you have. And time is not promised. So if there's something that you want to do, you may not be here tomorrow. If there's something you want to do with someone you love or something you want to do for yourself, find a way to do that as quickly as you can.
No, I like that answer, man. That's a unique, different answer.
Yeah.
Most people just say travel or something,
No.
or do my answer is just do this on a bigger scale. Like I would podcast, but I'd have like a legit studio set up. I'd like go meet people in person and have like a whole. It would just be what I'm doing now, but like more amplified.
Yeah. I saw something really it was I think something on Instagram. It said I saw it today actually. First make it exist, then make it good. So it would be nice for you to have all of that. But that
Mm,
usually just doesn't you don't just no one unless you have a bunch of money. But chances are if you had a bunch of money, you wanna be a podcaster, it's like, that's probably not gonna be really good because you haven't, like, cut your teeth interviewing
mm.
people, like, gone through the struggle, like, really appreciate what it means to make a good podcast. Like, you're gonna do that through the hustle, through the grind. So when you get there, it's like, "Man, I got the studio, I got these people working for me, I know what it took to get here."
It's like it was more worth it.
Yeah, yeah. Not knocking rich people because a lot of my clients are rich. I'm not doing so bad myself, but yeah, the not the hustle is real, you
I
know?
think it could take away from the appreciation of some things.
It could,
Yeah.
it could.
Well, Leighton, is there anything you'd like to share about your journey of happiness or anything in life that you think would resonate with anybody listening right now?
I think we covered a lot. I tell my kids I'm destined to be canceled. I don't know if I said anything cancel worthy today. I guess we'll find out. But,
No, you can't cancel you can't cancel people, man. Cancel I think Elon uh Elon posted something on X. He was like, cancel culture has been canceled.
that's hilarious. I love
He
that.
literally like he's a freaking madman on X, man. It's
Yeah.
like, how do you have time to like literally like run like $5 billion companies and then post on X every like 30 minutes? But yeah, that was like something I seen. I think it was like 2 or 3 days ago.
That's
It was
great.
like he was like announcing cancel culture has been canceled.
I hope he's right because we could definitely get rid of
So
that. So hopefully I won't be canceled or anything. But no, I think we've gone pretty deep, and I've tried to be open. Not as open as I can be because it's like ooh, some of that stuff can really go deep. But I think I've shared hopefully impactful stuff with people. Um, the only thing I'd say, I have written a book. I would like it to be successful. I'd like it to be successful because I feel it can help people. And if you
mhm.
liked if not you, but if your listeners liked any of the philosophies that I talked about or my ways of approaching life, that's kind of what the tone of the book is. Um, you know, if you struggle with happiness or if you're just trying to protect the happiness that you have, I think it could be a great resource. And you can check us out. Um, is it okay if I share my
Yeah, yeah, man, go ahead.
So our website is yourhappinesseq.com, and you can pre-order the book. The book is going to be launched on February 4th, 2025. So we're about 60 days away right now. And then our uh, social media platform that we post everything to and the most best stuff to is Instagram, and you can follow us there at Your Happiness EQ. That's it.
And yeah, I'll link everything as well. But thank you, man. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, man. Thank you for your time. This is my first long form podcast. I've been looking forward to doing a long form podcast. So just because I listen to them all the time, and it's interesting to be
Yeah,
on this side of the speaker.
the spectrum.
Yeah.
All right, everybody, go support him whenever that book comes out. I will link everything, so you could just go in the show notes, click, and yeah, maybe in the meantime try out the the equation, right?
Yeah,
The
they can go on that same website and they can answer the 7 questions and get their score right now. Like there's no
Yeah,
credit card,
you
no.
can do that right now
Yeah.
and go see what your score is. Um, yeah, and as always, everybody, stay curious, never give up. You got this. Peace.